Imagine a young boy stuffing socks with newspaper and rags because he cannot afford a real football. Picture another child watching his mother pour water into a half-empty milk carton, stretching it just to survive the week. Visualize a small, fragile 11-year-old being told by doctors that without expensive injections, he would never grow taller than 4 feet, 4 inches. Now imagine those same 3 boys lifting World Cup trophies, signing billion-dollar contracts, and becoming household names in every corner of the planet. This is not fiction. This is the real story of how some of football's greatest legends crawled out of slums, favelas, refugee neighborhoods, and forgotten villages to conquer the most watched sport on Earth. In the next 20 minutes, I will take you through the heartbreaking childhoods and miraculous rises of Pelé, Diego Maradona, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Ronaldinho, Zlatan Ibrahimović, Neymar Jr., Luis Suarez, Romelu Lukaku, and Sadio Mane. Stay with me until the end, because the final story will leave you speechless. Football is often called the beautiful game, but behind the bright stadium lights and the millions of cheering fans, there exists a darker, grittier truth. The greatest players in history were rarely born with silver spoons in their mouths. In fact, most of them came from environments where survival itself was a daily battle. They were born in tin-roofed shacks, in violent housing projects, in villages without electricity, and in slums where children grew up faster than they should. What separates these legends from the millions of other talented kids in the same conditions is not just skill. It is hunger. It is desperation. It is the refusal to accept that poverty had to be a life sentence. Each of the men we are about to discuss carried that fire from a young age, and football became their only ticket out. Let us begin with the man who started it all, the king himself. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, the boy the world would come to know as Pelé, was born in 1940 in Três, a small and impoverished town in rural Brazil. His family later moved to Bauru, where conditions did not improve. His father, Dondinho, was a struggling footballer whose career was cut short by a knee injury, leaving the family in deep financial difficulty. Pelé's mother worked as a maid, and the family often went without basic necessities. Pelé could not afford a real football as a child. He played barefoot in the dusty streets with a sock stuffed with newspaper and tied at the top with string. To help his family, he worked as a shoeshine boy in tea shops and railway stations, polishing strangers' boots for a few coins. He once stole peanuts so he could sell them and buy his very first pair of football boots, the Christian Science Monitor. At just 8 years old, after watching Brazil lose the 1950 World Cup final to Uruguay, he saw his father cry for the first time. He hugged him and promised, "Don't worry, Papa, I will win you a World Cup." 8 years later, at the age of 17, he kept that promise in Sweden, scoring 2 goals in the final and announcing his arrival to the world. Pelé would go on to win 3 World Cups, score over 1,000 goals, and become the global ambassador for the beautiful game. The shoeshin boy from Bauru had become a king. If Pelé was the king, then Diego Armando Maradona was the rebel god. He was born in 1960 in Villa Fiorito, a shanty town on the southern outskirts of Buenos Aires, Argentina. The neighborhood had no paved roads, no running water in many homes, and very little hope. His family lived in a tiny brick house with a dirt floor shared by his parents and 7 siblings, Al Jazeera. As a small child, Diego once fell into a cesspit behind his house and almost drowned in sewage. His uncle pulled him out and shouted the words that would later define him, "Dieguito, keep your head above the shit." That phrase became a metaphor for his entire life. While other children played with toys, Diego clung to a small football his cousin had gifted him. He slept with that ball under his arm every single night. By the age of 10, he was already performing ball juggling tricks during halftime of professional matches. Crowds came to the stadium just to watch the little boy from Fiorito. He used those few coins to bring food home to his mother, who often pretended not to be hungry so her children could eat more. Maradona rose to lift the 1986 World Cup almost single-handedly, dribbling past 5 English defenders for the goal of the century. He turned Napoli, a struggling club in southern Italy, into Italian champions. The boy from the slum did not just escape poverty, he rewrote what was possible. In 1985, on the small Portuguese island of Madeira, a baby boy was born into a family already struggling to feed 3 other children. His mother, Dolores Aveiro, has openly admitted that she considered terminating the pregnancy because the family simply could not afford another child. That baby was Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro Cultura Colectiva. Cristiano grew up in a tiny tin-roofed house perched on a hillside in the Santo Antnio neighborhood. He shared a single cramped room with his 3 siblings. His mother worked as a cook and a cleaner, while his father, Jostinis, was a kit man for a local amateur football club and suffered from severe alcoholism. There were nights when there was no food on the table and Dolores had to borrow bread from neighbors. At just 12 years old, Cristiano left his family and the only home he had ever known to join Sporting Lisbon's academy on the mainland. He cried himself to sleep every night, bullied for his thick Madeiran accent and his thin frame. Teachers and teammates mocked him, but he channeled every insult into training. He stayed on the pitch hours after everyone else had left. He lifted weights as a teenager to build the explosive body that would later define him. Today, he is a 5-time Ballon d'Or winner, the all-time top scorer in men's international football, and one of the most recognizable human beings on the planet. The boy from the tin-roofed house bought his mother the home of her dreams. In Rosario, Argentina, in 1987, a tiny boy was born into a working-class family. His father worked in a steel factory, and his mother was a part-time cleaner. Lionel Messi was magical with a ball from the moment he could walk, but at age 10, doctors delivered devastating news. He was diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency, a condition that required daily injections costing around $900 per month, a sum the family simply could not afford. Common dreams. Argentinian clubs refused to pay for his treatment. Newell's Old Boys, the club he loved, turned its back. River Plate scouted him but would not cover the medical costs. The Messi family was running out of options, and Lionel was running out of time. Without treatment, he would never grow past 4 feet, 4 inches, and his football career would end before it began. Then came the famous napkin moment. In the year 2000, FC Barcelona's sporting director Carles Rexach watched the 13-year-old play and was so stunned that he scribbled a contract on a paper napkin in a Barcelona restaurant. Barcelona agreed to pay for his treatment if the family moved to Spain. Lionel left everything behind: his friends, his cousins, his entire world. In Barcelona, he injected himself with growth hormones in his legs every single night, alone in a hotel room. That tiny, fragile boy grew up to win a record 8 Ballon d'Or trophies, score over 800 career goals, and finally lift the World Cup in 2022, completing what many call the greatest career in the history of the sport. Born in 1980 in Porto Alegre, Brazil, Ronaldo de Assis Moreira, known to the world as Ronaldinho, grew up in a poor neighborhood where football was not just a sport, it was an escape. His father, Jew, worked as a shipyard welder and played amateur football in his spare time. Tragically, when Ronaldinho was just 8 years old. His father drowned in the family's swimming pool after suffering a heart attack. The pool had been a gift from his older brother Roberto, who had signed a professional contract with Grêmio. That single moment shattered the family. Ronaldinho turned to football to deal with the grief. He played barefoot on dirt streets, on beaches, and in cramped futsal courts, developing the impossible close control and dribbling tricks that would later mesmerize the world. He once scored all 23 goals in a 23-0 youth match for his local team. When Ronaldinho finally exploded onto the world stage with Paris Saint-Germain and then Barcelona, he played with a smile that lit up stadiums. He brought joy back to football. He won the Ballon d'Or in 2005, the Champions League in 2006, and earned a standing ovation from Real Madrid's own fans at the Santiago Bernabeu, a feat almost no opposing player has ever achieved. The boy who lost his father in the family pool taught the world how to play with happiness again. In the rough immigrant neighborhood of Rosengård in Malm, Sweden, a tall, awkward, troubled boy grew up surrounded by crime, drugs, and broken families. Zlatan Ibrahimović, born in 1981 to a Bosnian Muslim father and a Croatian Catholic mother, lived through a childhood he himself described as completely rotten LA Times. His parents divorced when he was 2. His father struggled with alcoholism, and his mother worked cleaning jobs, sometimes coming home with bruises and pain. The refrigerator was often empty. Zlatan and his siblings would sometimes steal bicycles, candy, and food just to get by. He has admitted that he was a thief as a child, not out of malice, but out of necessity. What saved him was football. He found freedom on the pitch, where he could do things with the ball that none of his teammates or opponents could match. He played with an anger and a swagger born from years of being looked down on. He once said, "You can take the boy out of the ghetto, but you cannot take the ghetto out of the boy." Zlatan went on to win league titles in 4 different countries, score acrobatic goals that defy physics, and earn over 200 million euros in his career. The kid from Rosengard became a global icon of self-belief. In 1992, in Mogi das Cruzes near São Paulo, Brazil, a tiny baby was born into a family struggling to put food on the table. At just 4 months old, the infant survived a car crash that left him with a fractured skull, an early sign that Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. was born to defy the odds. The Neymar family lived in extreme poverty, at times sharing a single small home with grandparents and cousins. His father, also named Neymar, had been a promising footballer whose career was cut short, and he worked multiple jobs to support the family. They moved frequently, sometimes living near a dumping ground, and electricity was a luxury they could not always afford. Mumbai Mirror. Young Neymar fell in love with futsal, the small-sided indoor version of football popular in Brazilian favelas. Futsal demanded quick feet, quick thinking, and outrageous skill in tight spaces. That is where his trademark flair was born. By age 11, he was already drawing scouts. Santos signed him, and by 17, he was a senior team star. In 2017, Paris Saint-Germain bought him for 222 million euros, making him the most expensive player in football history. The boy who once lived near a dumping ground became the face of a billion-dollar transfer. In Salto, Uruguay, in 1987, Luis Alberto Suarez Daz was born the 4th of 7 brothers. The family was so poor that the children often went without shoes. When Luis was 9, his parents separated and his mother moved the family to Montevideo, where conditions only got harder. To help his mother, young Luis worked as a street sweeper in Montevideo, cleaning sidewalks for tiny wages. ESPN. He attended school in worn-out clothes and battled an inferiority complex around wealthier kids. His childhood sweetheart Sofia, who came from a more comfortable family, eventually moved to Spain with her parents. That separation lit a fire in him. He vowed to become a professional footballer so he could one day be with her again. He kept that promise. Suarez clawed his way through Nacional in Uruguay, then to Groningen, Ajax, Liverpool, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid. He won league titles in 3 countries, lifted the Champions League, and became one of the most feared strikers of his generation. He married Sofia. He brought his mother out of poverty. The street sweeper had become a serial winner. Few stories are as heartbreakingly honest as the one Romelu Lukaku himself shared in his famous article in the Players' Tribune. Born in Antwerp, Belgium in 1993 to Congolese parents, Romelu's father had once been a professional footballer for Zaire, but by the time Romelu was a boy, the family was completely broke. He remembers the exact day everything changed for him. He was 6 years old. He came home one afternoon and saw his mother pouring water into the milk cart. She was mixing water with milk so that their meals of bread and milk would last the whole week. She smiled at him as if everything was fine. But he knew. The electricity had been cut off. The rats came out at night. His mother sometimes pretended she was not hungry so her children could eat the Players' Tribune. That day, 6-year-old Romelu made a vow. He told himself this would never be his family's reality again. He started playing football with rage. He lied about his age just to play against older kids. By 11, he was scoring 76 goals in a single school season. By 16, he was the top scorer in the Belgian league. He went on to play for Chelsea, Manchester United, Inter Milan, and the Belgian national team, scoring more goals for his country than any player in history. The boy who watched his mother water down the milk became one of the most powerful strikers on the planet, and he bought his mother every comfort she had ever dreamed of. The final story is perhaps the most beautiful of them all. In Bambali, a tiny remote village in southern Senegal with no electricity, no proper school, and no hospital, a quiet boy named Sadio Mane was born in 1992. His father, a respected local imam, died when Sadio was just 7 years old because the village had no medical facilities to treat him. That loss would shape Sadio's entire life. The New York Times, The Athletic. His family wanted him to become a teacher or an imam. Football was seen as a waste of time. But Sadio loved the game so much that as a teenager, he ran away from home, traveling alone to the capital city of Dakar with nothing but a small bag and a dream. His family eventually accepted his passion, and Sadio joined a local academy, then moved to France with Metz, then to Salzburg, Southampton, Liverpool, and Bayern Munich. He won the Champions League with Liverpool in 2019 and the Africa Cup of Nations with Senegal in 2022. But what makes Sadio's story extraordinary is what he did next. He built a school in Bambali. He built a hospital. He built a mosque. He paid for water systems, donated laptops, and gives every family in the village a monthly stipend. When asked why he does not buy luxury watches or fancy cars, he famously said, "Why would I want 10 Ferraris, 20 diamond watches, or 2 planes? I prefer that my people receive a little of what life has given me." The boy from Bambali did not just escape poverty. He turned around and pulled his entire village out with him. These 10 stories share one common thread. Talent did not save these boys. Hunger did. Desperation did. The refusal to accept that the conditions of their birth had to be the conditions of their lives. Pele, Maradona, Cristiano, Messi, Ronaldinho, Zlatan, Neymar, Suarez, Lukaku, and Mon. 10 different countries. 10 different stories. One shared truth. Football did not just give them fame and fortune. It gave them dignity. It gave them the power to lift their mothers, their families, and sometimes their entire communities out of the darkness they were born into. So the next time you watch a magical goal, a perfect dribble, or a thunderous strike from one of these legends, remember that behind every touch of the ball is a child who once had nothing but a dream and the courage to chase it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more stories that prove the impossible is just one more goal away. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.